Welcome, folks. We are live with our second panel, ProPanel of Hollerween 2, a celebration of Holler and all things Savage Worlds. And we are joined by currently 3, but maybe 2.5, because John is sketchy as always. You just never know with Mr. Goff. Oh, look, his face is frozen.
And there I go.
Right? Oh, here he is. He's back. Yes,
he's back.
So forgive us if John has connection issues. He is currently
debriefing
a foreign intelligence agency on a highly secretive matter, and it's killing his bandwidth. So if you have problems with John, just know he's saving the world from things we can't tell you about. But today's panel is professional writing and RPG research. And I'm joined by 3 of the guys who do it best for Pinnacle. So John. John, say hello to everybody.
Hello.
And John, what things have you written for Pinnacle and for the RPG industry, man? Let us know what's your little curriculum vitae.
Mostly everything.
Mostly everything. And as Christian says, yes, this is the panel for harassing John about where Deadlands Noir.
I think I'm.
Oh, he's live again. He thinks he's. Let's see. We all did the John face. We get. Come on, John gods. Yes, let's do this. Oh. Well, there is more John coming when his internet clears up. The Mr. Woodard, tell us
I'm going to try something different.
Okay.
I'll be back shortly.
So we're going to boot him. There might be more over John. Hopefully that'll be John.
Back shortly.
Come back, John.
Yeah, it's the anticipation.
Exactly. There we go. Thank you, Chris.
So Mr. Woodard,
over to me. So for Pinnacle, the 6th gun, which you're seeing behind me, I figured I'd throw that up since it's Halloween and we've got some zombies and things going on back there. I wrote that, and of course Flash Gordon, and there is another project coming soon, but if I told you what it was, I'd have to kill y'all. So that's about it for game writing for Pinnacle.
Nice. And then you're also, Mr. Hollywood Woodard. So
that's true.
It's not just RPG writing that you can bring to
true.
The
Yeah.
Here, so.
I've written some audio adventures for Big Finish Productions, Doctor Who and Dark Shadows. I've written some nonfiction stuff. I've got a book out about the history of sword and sorcery movies that was published by another RPG publisher. And what else have I written? And I've worked for Warner Brothers and Disney and a few other companies that nobody's ever heard of.
Right. I mean, it's not like Warner Brothers and Disney are doing anything important recently.
Nah, not at all.
And your better half, I mean, this is the coolest thing. Your better half has secrets about the upcoming Mandalorian because she's amazing and works on all things Hollywood. So, you're a lucky dude, sir.
I know.
Right, John Doom. See, John Doom knows.
Yep, John, you're right. Yep.
And last but not least, Mr. Earley. Tell us about your nascent RPG career, and then what other kind of writing you do otherwise, because you're kind of like a big deal in some other circles too. So,
well, my nascent RPG career writing is all Holler all the time. I've been thinking exhaustively and exclusively about Holler for the last 2 years. I close my eyes at night. I see the Ghost Ridge Mountains on the back of my eyelids. So far, it's Holler. I've done a few little things. I've written a little bit, just very small adventures for Calvin Thompson and Eric Lamoureux, something for Wise Guys, something for Gods and Masters. I'm writing something for the upcoming Stingers and Spores. So little side projects, and then the huge, big Holler project, which turned out to be pretty massive in terms of word count and those kinds of things. And before, 25 years prior, I've been a poet and a professor. I write a very weird experimental form of poetry, which, limited my audience to about 14 people. So this is like massive exposure.
Is this better?
Yes.
It better.
Both an exposure.
Now I've got no sound in here. Hold on.
That's cool. Well, we got you, John. So we'll let you finish. But yes, this is.
I mean,
good.
that's all that matters, essentially, that we can hear John.
Right. John doesn't hear us. Yeah. This is awesome. So I think for all you guys, yes, John, this is good. You're looking good, dude. I like the headset. It's very call center.
Yeah.
You could ask us about our car insurance. And,
what about your car warranties?
Right. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad we got John. So we will let John get set up for a second. And
do this.
Awesome. So guys, how about first question for top two while we get John working? What's your writing process like? How do you get started in the day to become a writer? Like what's your technique? What's your process? I'll start with Scott. I think the interested to hear how do you fit writing into your life and make it a passion and then a profession? What's the process like, sir?
Well, it's extremely difficult for me because I work as a copywriter for my day job. So I write all day long and then I have to stop down and then write all night or devote my weekends to writing. So it's kind of a 24/7 type of thing here. But at the same time, there's day job and then there's writing game stuff. So one is fun and one is not so fun. Although, as you get closer to the deadline, both of them are less fun. But but yeah, I mean, it's really sort of just relegating or delegating certain amounts of time to specifically to the game writing, where that's all you're going to do. So I'll put on some good music, appropriate music for what I'm writing, which could be anything. Certainly, when I was writing Flash Gordon, I was listening to stuff from the 30s and 40s and big band, and so I really wanted to sort of get into that Alex Raymond mindset, and he's the guy who basically drew all the old Flash Gordon strips. But yeah, so I just kind of immerse myself in everything that I can possibly pull together to get me inspired to do the writing. But that's about it. I mean, it is difficult, like I say, to separate the work from the game writing, the work from the work from the fun work, whatever. So yeah.
That is awesome. Mr. Earley, what is your process like? How do it mean? And really, dovetail on that. What's the like Scott mentioned, like the work versus the passion work. What's the difference between writing as a professor, writing for poetry, and then writing for RPGs?
Yeah, so the writing I do as part of my day job, most of it is comments on other people's writing. Right, I'm just flooded with words every day by 18 to 22-year-olds, and I'm giving them feedback. My wife is a poet who also teaches writing, and so there's a lot of language flowing around the house at all times. Right, in my poetry, I just I could do whatever I wanted. Small audience, right? No real constraints or rules in this genre. The more incomprehensible you are, sometimes the more venerated you are. So it's sort of an easy mark to hit. When you're writing for games, you have to write in a way that sort of translates immediately to the GM, to the player. It has to be clear, has to be concise. You're giving, right, the whole time. And you want to have flavor, you want to have color, but not a lot of people want to read a novel in order to run a game. So you have to strike a balance between, evoking the setting through description and then giving enough gameable stuff and frameworks in a clear and concise manner. So it's very different kinds of writing, right? And I inhabit sort of the same mindset, though, regardless. I'm sort of a writer who just thinks for a long time, and then I won't write, and then I write it all at once. Like I wrote the plot point campaign for Holler in about 7 or 8 days. It's maybe 25,000 words, but I thought about it constantly and sort of immersed myself the same way Scott was talking about: music, books, movies, just anything I can find. And then you just wait until the pressure builds and then it comes out on the page. That's sort of how I work.
So, Mr. Goff, it looks like we have live feed.
Yeah.
Goff sign. So, similar question to you. What's your writing process? And then to dovetail on kind of Scott and Tim's answers, what's it like tailoring writing to people who are going to have to extrapolate that writing into a game? So,
Well, Scott, a lot of what Scott said really hit home to me. You hear, do what you love and you'll never work another day in your life. And I think Shane made the correct statement, is do what you love and you'll never not work. I've been doing this for over a quarter of a century at this point, and it does start to get tough. In my day job, I have to write very concise, straightforward, nothing but the facts sentences. And I found that really is hard to break out of that mindset now to write settings. But the immersion that both of them talked about is basically what does it for me, to just to really dig in and devote myself. Or another trick I've got is to just get myself where I'm not thinking at all. The joke is you come up with your best ideas in the shower. And to some degree, that's true. Your mind kind of just decentralizes, and those subconscious thoughts come up. And you're like, oh, yeah, that's what I need to do here. I used to, when we lived back in Washington, I would stop, go out and walk in the woods for 45 minutes. And my brain would then mull over whatever I was trying to get out. And I would have a solution every time by the time I came out. And that writing, Tim hit on it. You have to, this isn't fiction writing. It's not report writing. It's almost like script writing, but not quite, in that you're setting the stage and laying out the plot, but the actual dialogue is up to the GM and the players. So you kind of have to think of it like you're plotting a situation for someone else to deal with. And I got a piece of advice way back, maybe before you were born, Mr. Landauer. No.
From the world was still an innocent, good place.
Another a serious veteran of the game industry, Steve Long. And what he said to me, and I think there's tremendous truth in it, it's every sentence you put in setting information should have the potential to be an adventure hook for the game master. In other words, description only has a point if it furthers the setting in the GM's mind. You're not describing just to paint a picture.
Well, and that Shane is doing his best to make me break on camera. He's pinging me in the background. There is not mustard on my beard, sir, and I'm not surfing bad sites. But Shane.
Oh wait, we're not supposed to do that.
Right. That is why John. Yeah, I was telling everybody John Goff was helping save national security. It was really, he was surfing horrible things. That is actually one funny thing. So this is the thing we've all laughed about, Jody and Shane, and I with you guys as well. As an RPG writer, our browser histories are totally suspect. So let's do another round of questions on the research. Where do you guys find information? Where do you drill for inspiration, and then factoids about your writing? So let's start back with Scott. Don't have to show us your browser history, sir, but where do you get the inspiration from? Where do you start for adding what's not inside you already? Where do you go for that?
Right. Well, I mean, regardless of what I'm writing, I start with real world stuff first. I mean, that's you have to go to history, you have to go to science, you have to go to things that are tangible that people know about, and then you can start to delve into the myths and the fiction. So even when I was writing something like, say, Flash Gordon, a lot of what I would do is I would look at, when I would be pulling bits and pieces out of the original comic strips, I would look at the date when that stuff was written and kind of then research around that period of time, what kind of stuff was happening in the world. Not that we necessarily wanted the game to be a period piece, but I still wanted to see sort of what was the mindset, what were people reading about, and what was on the news, and in the news at that time, it would be in the papers. What kind of stuff was influencing people at that time, and then I would sort of drag that into the adventures or into whatever segment of the books I was working on. So again, and the same thing with Six Gun. When I was writing Six Gun, sure, I had the graphic novels that I needed to mine just completely, but I also researched a ton of stuff about the Old West. I mean, just the real Old West. And I'm sure John has done the same thing when writing Deadlands. I mean, you just have to immerse yourself in that real history. That's one of the things I definitely would say that I like to go for is sort of the real stuff first and then work backwards. And the project that I'm working on right now, fortunately, it's contemporary. So I was able to reach out to, friends and people in various industries and just make phone calls and ask about how certain things work. So again, reaching out to the real world before then I immerse myself in the fictional worlds.
If you get out of the house, you can experience the contemporary real world too.
I don't think I can though.
Leaving is such sweet sorrow, right? Wasn't that the line from Shakespeare? Yeah. Outside is overrated. There's sunshine and cancer from sunshine out there. So, you can just stay inside. It's good.
Sunshine's the only thing that causes it.
Right. So so reverse order this time. You're actually have legit investigative skills in your other career. How does that come into play? I mean, you've got some scary. I mean, Tim's the professor of research stuff, but you've got like tracking people down stuff. So how does that come into play?
To a degree, it's a lot of the same skill set. It's for one thing, you don't trust one source. You build off of a hypothesis and find evidence that either supports or disproves that hypothesis. It just teaches you to dig a little harder. Like, everybody says, oh, don't use Wikipedia. Don't rely on Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a great place to start because it gives you the hooks. And even more so, you read something on Wikipedia and then you're like, I need to look into that because I don't trust it. Is this a slanted view or is this actually the case historically? And but I also don't stick to the internet. It's handy to still have old school books on the shelf because I've got some reference materials, for instance, on mythological creatures and folklore monsters and so forth that literally all you can find is a single sentence if you try and look it up on the internet. But these books will give you paragraphs or pages on them. Not everything is on the internet, and I think that's the trap that a lot of people fall into is they think it's there, or they believe what they read because I stumbled across something I wrote years ago for a Deadlands book presented as folklore facts. At one point, I'm like, that's not right. I completely made that up. But I think it was something about the Jersey Devil, which it just cracked me up when I was looking for folklore and I came across names that I knew I had made up. So that's why you have to go to other places besides just what you can type into your keyboard. It's a great tool, but it's way too easy to just fall into everything that I read on the internet I can use.
I think that's the sign that you've arrived is when something you've created enters the zeitgeist entirely unconnected back to you. That's fantastic. So Tim, that's an interesting kind of idea there is that how are you finding the difference between academic writing where truth is more paramount? I'll say more. I won't say paramount. Versus, game writing where truth isn't paramount, right? There's a higher goal of creativity, art, new expression, fun, whatever that higher goal is. We get to create stuff. We have an access to freedom. So how are you finding the difference between those two?
Well, and in academic work, you have this like community of peers, and there's sort of these hierarchies, that are established through peer reviewing each other's work and through, accumulation of knowledge, how that knowledge is presented. And it's a very sort of high stakes, heady game. And so it's been very fun and freeing to have as little fidelity to the truth as possible, right? And your fidelity is toward being entertaining. Now with Holler, I have a bookshelf that's just all Holler books that I use in Holler research. And I've read some of those before I started writing Holler, of course. There's about 40 books there. I pulled a lot from those sources, but I'll be absolutely like just an omnivorous scavenger and absolutely mercenary about finding things that will be interesting in the setting, that'll fit in the setting. I try to draw connections between things that might not naturally occur to folks, like the foothills, the textile mills in the foothills of Western North Carolina had their own labor conflicts and strikes in the 20s and 30s. That doesn't get talked about a lot in connection with the coal camps in Eastern Kentucky and West Virginia. Like West Virginia, Eastern Kentucky, that sometimes that's sort of thought of as ground center of Appalachia, core Appalachia, and it is in a lot of ways. But the experience of folks in those textile mills, they lived in mill villages too. They went to company stores. They got paid in script. There was similar violence. So drawing parallel lines between cultural realities and just feeling like you can do that because it's a game and you don't have to like justify it other than just doing it. And if it increases drama, if it increases conflict, if it makes things more interesting, then it's legitimate. Those are the standards, right? Unless you're writing a simulationist game that's very into, representing history. But, I'm representing labor conflict alongside like sheep squatches and, Mothmen and things like that. So it gives you a lot of, once the sheep squatch gets involved, sort of like all like prohibitions are gone, right? And
I'm so excited for that. Yeah. We've got the preview for the sheep squatch coming out hopefully sometime in the next couple of days on N-World. I cannot wait till you guys can all see this sheep squatch. I mean, come on now. If anybody was on the fence and really who can be on this game for Holler, sheep squatch should push you into the you must own this. And maybe just maybe the limited edition leatherette cover will be with sheep squatch vellum. Right?
It's wrapped in sheep squatch skin. I wanted to just mention one other thing, and it's something you always hear on panels with authors or seminars with authors, is that whole write what you know thing, which I think is really important for even for game design and game writing. There's a lot of stuff that I will draw from my own experiences, especially the project I'm working on right now, where I was able to pull things from my own childhood, and obviously they have been. It is. It absolutely is. A lot of them have been wildly fictionalized, but the seeds were all things that had actually happened to me. And those are some of the things I'm most proud of in the current manuscript, the secret manuscript. But write what you know as well. I mean, always look towards your own family history and things like that.
I think that's a very valid point. I'd actually wanted to touch on it too. The write what you know doesn't mean limit yourself to what you know. It's use what you know to expand on what you're working with. Like in the childhood thing that Scott mentioned, an excellent example. And I only figured this out a few years ago. I've always been fascinated by flooded towns. I've written at least 3 adventures that have flooded towns in them. And I just think there's always something frightening about what's beneath the water. And it finally occurred to me, we had an apocalyptic flood when I was 12 that literally beggars the mind to believe. It filled the valley from side to side. Buildings 2 stories tall went underwater. You could see those huge propane tanks like you see behind, industrial buildings. I remember watching for lack of a better word, herd of them float going down this torrent on the other side. And a couple of them whistling as the propane's going away. And it never occurred to me how big of an impact it had on me. But I was writing what I knew. The what's scary to me, and I think to a lot of people, is that vast unknown under the water. And knowing there's something down there, but not knowing what it is. The thing that, just to go off on a tangent, I was standing in the second story of a building and I saw what looked like a tray floating past right beneath the window. And I thought, I'll grab that. It's big, but I'll grab it. It's floating. How heavy can it be? And I reached down, and then the tray started to come up. And well, Tim will know what this is. It was the bed of a coal truck that was underwater passing beneath the building. And it was like watching a whale come up out of the water. And it really, I think, impacted my psyche. And that unknown has kind of permeated so much of what I write because it's what I know.
Yeah, there's totally so the phenomenon for this is submechanophobia, and there is a fantastic Reddit group if you ever want to join where people just post pictures that invoke this sense of like what is the mystery under the water, what's going on down there. It's legit, it's cool. But wanted to share that one. So I'm like, oh yeah, I think there was one like Shane loves sharks. I'm not a big fan of sharks. Like I've got when I was a little kid on the beach in like San Diego, I was out there like first time at Disney, all that kind of stuff. And my dad was joking around. He's like, and the waves were kind of really pulling, like they were going out. So when they kind of come in and they go like, it trip you as a little kid. And my dad's like, oh, that's the sharks circling out there, making that action. They're just waiting for a little snack for a kid like you. And scarred ever since. So it fits in with the write what you know from the traumas of your childhood. But
Christopher, I travel a lot by car. I drive everywhere. And while I'm driving, I'm always trying to find some inspiration of some sort. And going out to the Deadwood event, I stopped at this rest area in the middle of nowhere in South Dakota, and in the back was this tiny little white church just off the state property that it was like a 1/8 size church. You could barely stand up and walk into it. And there was a whole story behind why it was there. And there was a little book where people signed in. And that triggered this would be something that you could really work with in a investigative horror adventure, is this odd little building. So it's something as simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a one for Scott to start around. How do you get better at writing? So I mean, like every Tuesday morning I get to work with Scott. He puts out our newsletter, and we hand him the trashiest prose, like the worst prose ever. And he turns it into wonderful things that are like, wow. If only, I mean, that sounds so much more exciting than what it even really is going to be. But let alone what the pros we handed. So how do you cut your teeth? How do you get good? What's the process of improving your art? Because I think, as a non-professional writer, like for art, for like graphic art, I think our human eye is trained, and you can tell when people have put in the hours and have certain skills, right? But since most people are literate, especially like on the internet or in publishing, at a bare minimum, it's harder to tell. It's really, you can't instantaneously see a piece of text and say, oh, that's fantastic and professional. You actually have to read it and get into it. How do you do that differential? Where do you start to improve your prose from literacy to this is compelling, this is professional, this is going to convey what it needs to? What do you think that that process is like, or how have you done it?
Doing it a lot. I mean, just if you write a lot, you're naturally going to become better over time, which is one of the things whenever I talk to people who are like, how do I get into writing? It's like, write. I mean, that's really all you can say is just start writing. But so a lot of just experience, just doing it over and over and over again, but also reading. I highly recommend reading as much as you can, because you'll just absorb cadence, and you'll build your dictionary, your own personal dictionary up just from reading a book. So reading and writing, it sounds crazy to say, those are hugely important, but at the same time, paying very, very close attention to pop culture. For me, it's hugely important for the stuff that I write, and certainly for writing news. I have to be aware of the stupidest little references to drop in that I know a fair amount of people who are going to read our news each week will get, whether it's some goofy thing off TikTok or some meme that's going around. That stuff you can mine and incorporate into your work, and it's great because those things they ping. People will catch those little bits and pieces. So I personally try to pay as much attention to current trends, pop culture, social media, things like that, to influence my work. Even if I'm writing something that's classic in style or set in another historical period, there's still parallels that I can draw. So just do it a lot. I mean, write as much as you can, read as much as you can, and also absorb a lot of other media. There's, even just watching a movie can really help you become a better writer. And also try to write stuff that's not just the same thing. If there's any way that you can write, say, a screenplay or a play or poetry, or do something that is outside of your comfort zone. A lot of people just think all I'm going to do is write game stuff. Or that's fine, but if you want to become a better writer, it's best to actually write other things. Write a short story, whatever. So it's a lot of just experience and just forcing yourself to do as much as you can, and also to absorb as much as you can.
So Tim, same question. Yeah, how do you get good, son?
Well, very similar response in some ways. Like when I started with the idea that I want to write for role-playing games, the first thing I did was I read Flash Gordon front to back. I read Deadlands Noir. I read 50 Fathoms. I tried to see all these different approaches, and I wasn't reading as a fan, even though I am a fan and a player and a GM. I was trying to read as a writer, to think tactically. Why are they making this choice? Why is this ordered in this way? How are they building up sort of narrative tension over the plot point campaign, right? Why does this chapter start here and we jump here, right? And to try to read in a sort of a tactical, strategic way. And I started reading genre fiction. I started reading a lot more pulp fiction to try to get into the rhythms of that kind of literature. And I think also just lowering expectations when you begin, and accepting that a lot of what you write is going to suck, to not put too fine of a point on it. The first draft can be as atrocious as possible. It can be really horrible. You can change it. It's not going anywhere. You can change it many times over, right? Larry Brown is a Southern writer from Oxford, Mississippi, passed away, early 20th century now, I guess. He had an amazing story where he'd been a firefighter for all of his adult life, and he just one day said, I have an urge to write. And he wrote, gosh, I don't even know. I'm going to mess up the numbers, but like half a dozen full novels, like dozens and dozens of short stories. And once he made it, he looked back and I said, nothing I wrote in those first half dozen novels or dozens and dozens of short stories was worth saving, right? But the practice of it got him there. He's an extreme example. Most people do not have to go through that sort of extended apprenticeship. But just realizing that it's okay for it not to be good the first time out, because a lot of people have a notion of what it should be. They see what they've done. They see the gap. And the way you close it is to keep reading, to keep writing, and to accept that, revision is just as important a part of the process as the first draft. We all love our first drafts. We're giddy with our first drafts. There's this little bump of euphoria that often comes like 20 minutes after you finish writing and you're reading it and you're thinking, oh, I'm quite the genius. You read it a week later and you're like, I am quite not the genius. And you see the typos and you see, the continuity lapses and you see the clunky sentences, but all that can be fixed.
So yeah, John, to you, similar question. How do you get good, and what's it like having to go back to the same, like you get a big success, you're published in an area, and then you got to do number two. Well, what's the next one like? And is that different? And is it harder? Is it easier? Is it better? So how did you get good? And then how do you make sure that you're not one and done? How do you do number two?
So to do the first question, one thing I found is reading other authors. Find the voice that you like. Doesn't matter the genre, but look at other people that do it and do it well, and figure out what makes them do well, not just games. I'm a huge fan of mid-career Joe Lansdale. I think that he has a voice that is the step past Hemingway that I like. Hemingway, I think, can be too concise. Lansdale gets enough jibber jabber into his work to make it fun to read, but still not. I read I think it was Dean Koontz, where there was literally a single sentence that ran for a half-page paragraph. And I got to the end of it. I'm like, holy crap, was that one sentence? But some people can make that work. Clearly, Koontz can, because he's got a whole lot more money than I do. But that's not what appeals to me. And as a result, I can't do that. There's, again, write what you know, but also write what you like. I've had projects that have made me want to quit writing. So I've gotten a little pickier about it now. If it's something you don't enjoy writing, it's going to be just brutal, because it saps your creativity, which is what you have to write, and you're forcing yourself to grind through it. So write what you know, write what you like. I got better because my mortgage depended on it. It's the, both Scott and Tim spoke about first drafts. When I got started, I was having to write at such a pace that there was no such thing. It's done, send it off, move to the next one. And pretty quickly, I have to figure out how to make it good enough so that first one is going to be good enough for the editor you sent it to, because you don't have time to go back and rewrite. So pressure was a help to me. It was, you've got to get this 60,000 word book done in a month, and it has to be ready to go to layout 1 week after that. So I was a younger man then and hungry.
Yeah, I mean, just as a follow up to that, I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, but I've worked in industries where writing precisely in very limited amounts of time has been essential. So working as a writer producer for television, where I had to deliver scripts within sometimes hours, and it had to be good to go, and it had to be, we were going to have voice actors come in and read this stuff, so the dialogue had to be correct. And then the same thing with my day job, where I'm working as a copywriter. And the buck stops with me. When I write that stuff, it goes live on the website. There's no editor after me. Yeah. So all that stuff has been good. It certainly has helped me hone my skills, but it's also been a bit of a detriment, because I always write to be as precise as possible, which means I self-edit, which slows the process down a little bit. But yeah, so it definitely comes from a variety of different things.
Well, that's a great next question. We'll get to, Christian's got a great question, but we'll get to let's stay on this editing thing. The processes for self-editing, and then at what point do you know you need another eyeball on it, where you just can't be you anymore? Let's start with Scott. But you got that one, and like, how do you self-edit? Like, what do you look for? Is there a technique that you can try to notice?
Yeah.
I know some people read stuff backwards. I've never found that. My brain doesn't work that way.
No.
What techniques work for you on editing?
The big one, and I always tell my fellow writers to do this, is read everything aloud. I like to write everything that I do, even if it's a bit of copywriting or it's game writing and it's just game mechanics or something, but I read everything aloud, and I look for rhythm. I want it to read like something you would enjoy hearing. And it's crazy to say for stuff that is not especially entertaining, but I will read everything aloud. It allows me to catch errors, correct punctuation, find out where the pause should be. That's my biggest one. There's not really much beyond that, but just I revisit it. But like I said earlier, the problem is that I might read and reread a paragraph 20 times before I'm comfortable with it and the way it sounds. But that's a big one for me.
Nice, Tim. How do you go about editing? What's the process for you? How do you catch stuff?
I sort of obsessively read and reread just so many times. It would probably frighten me to know the number of hours I've gone back looking at things I've written. Right? It almost feels like a sickness at times. Right? And as you get to this level of exhaustion, like I've done all I can do, I am done with this. And that's when you need another set of eyes. I'm married to someone who is far smarter than me and has a much more precise eye than I do. So that's helpful. Yeah, after you exhaust your resources in wrestling with what you've done, it's always helpful to have multiple other readers because they want to read in different ways.
So to John, how do you edit, and then what's it like handing your work off to editors, and what's that process like? And how do you accept feedback when you're not? Scott made a good point about for his day job he's the last in line. What if you're not last in line and there's somebody else between you and publication? What's that?
Can I take the fifth?
Like? Yeah, Shane's listening, so yeah, you can. We can totally.
Yeah. Let me see if you can see my shirt. Be hard to kill, because I don't do anything with a lot of caution. So that transfers over to my writing. I write it and I get it done, and I don't ever want to see it again, because I will always find something wrong with it. My stuff that's published, I rarely go back and read, because I will always feel it's not good enough. I'm a horrible, horrible critic. Terrible to watch movies with. I nitpick constantly, and I do the same to my stuff. So my survival instinct kicked in like almost immediately, and I write it and I hand it off, and apparently it's usually good enough. Yeah. I seldom have anything sent back, rewrite this whole thing. And when I hand it off to the editor, I try to maintain a thought process of, I was paid to create, I've created, that is theirs now. And and I'm sure Shane will confirm, whenever someone asks me about something I want to edit, usually I try to respond whatever, because obviously I think I did it the best way, or I wouldn't have done it that way. And debating it doesn't work for me, because I'm never going to admit I'm wrong. Even when I know I'm wrong, I'm terrible about it. So usually I just want, if you need to fix it, please fix it. I'm sure there are errors in there, and I hope to God you find them all. I'm not sure that you will, because there's a ton in there. But I can be really argumentative if I'm drawn into a discussion over changing something. Usually it's rules. The setting stuff we run on pretty well, because the settings you're setting, unless you're doing an IP, and there are times when I can brainstorm on that. But if I've written a rule, I'm often pretty stubborn about it. So I just kind of say, hey, just change it. If you don't like it, change it. I obviously thought that was the way to do it. So, and after, 25 years, I think Shane knows when we're butting heads, and he just fixes it, just fixes it, and doesn't bring me into it, which I appreciate.
I imagine, John, you probably read when the email comes through and it says, hey, John, what if we do it like, you're like, that's all I have to read. Response is, fine, go ahead.
Nailed it. Yeah, whatever you want. Okie doke.
I just love that I tried to fact check John after the fact on Blood Drive, and he's like, oh no, Padawans. I think it was like there was a reference to like Rio, Colorado.
It was the line on a county in like 1880 something Wyoming, that somebody had submitted, hey, actually the county is this, and I'm like, no, that changed in this year. It runs here. Here's the map.
Oh, you got that one right. The one I said to you, I was like, oh, John, no, this is the wrong. The Rio Colorado is to the east, not the west of where these people are right here. And you're like, oh, no, Padawan. There's another Rio Colorado. And I was like, oh, he did his research more than I did.
Historical stuff I'm obsessive about, particularly stuff that I know there's documentation of, which is driving me nuts on Dark Ages.
Historical is tough, right? Because it's like, but we will get to your question, Christian. It's a great one for Scott. But yeah, now that you've mentioned it, now that you've spoken the name of the demon, we have to let it manifest. What is it like digging that far back as far as research, trying to get, separate, I don't know, material other authors have done a decent amount of myth making with? I mean, you've already proven that some of your writing has entered into the zeitgeist as fact when it was in fact, from your own brain. How do you get in and separate? I mean, even just considering like Arthur, right? Like Arthur's a big part of the mythos there, and very little historical, if anything. We have lists of kings, and we've never found one, but there's been so much written about it, and it's just part of multiple folklores and the cultures there. What is that process like, man? What are you finding when it's digging into a part where we don't have a lot of documentation?
It's largely hellish. We're a few hundred years after the quote unquote historical Arthur. So I get to avoid that. And we're going with kind of a mythological one. We picked the myth that we wanted, made the adjustments to it, and that's what we're running with. But Dark Ages is set right as they're starting to write stuff down. But there's a lot of argument between historians as to who was here then and who was in power and what was really going on. If you read one, they're absolutely positive it was this way. They read another like, no, he's an idiot. It was this way. So I did have to edit somewhat on this because I got obsessive into personalities and dates. That one of the things that came up in one of our games, did they have chimneys then? It's like, crap. And then I realized it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter if they had chimneys. But pulling the stuff that doesn't matter out, that's fascinating but pointless because you don't have the space. But the actual history for that era is just hair pulling. We don't really know much more than what one or two people have written, and then what other people have gone back and kind of sniped at and said, I don't think that's how it happened. It's like, well, were you there? I don't know. What are you basing this on? And constantly, it's just so spread out and diffuse. This has been the most intense research I've had to do on anything. And eventually you just come down to the point where that's what I'm going with. So,
hey John, I'm going to send you my outline for the chimney horror for use with the Dark Ages. Okay.
This is documented. # trademark done.
They actually did not have chimneys, apparently, according to all evidence. I guess they just sat in smoky houses. I don't know. It makes most of my little house miniatures look unauthentic now.
And you do bring some excellent props for the games, man. Now I'm sad that you're going to be sad looking at them when you run. But anachronism is tough, right? And especially because a lot of what we want to bring to games is some of the things we think are cool. I mean, I know in designing a Renaissance era game, plague doctors are much later in history than we think they are, and that mask that is so iconic that you're going to have in the game because it's like 300 years. I'm like, I'm so sad it's so much later in real history. But even little things like that. I mean, it's like, it's almost like I need this element because it's such a cool visual, and it's, if plague is part of what you're writing about, that's what people think and people want. And if it's not there, they will feel like you're not giving it to them. And it's like, yeah, but it's such a late plague thing, not an early plague thing. And anyways, so similarly, Tim, man, you're not going back nearly as far, but similarly, you are going to an area where the volume of scholarship might not be as substantial, and the what have you found the research element for Holler? And also similarly, how have you separated? I mean, by growing up so much in that culture and being a part of it, have you separated the anachronism things that are aren't exactly in the time period? And do you throw those back in if they're too cool, or like John, are you going to have to give up your chimneys? Is it part of killing your darlings? Is sacrificing your chimneys?
It just threw the plot point into such disarray.
That's why it's delayed, folks. You've heard it here now. The only reason you don't have Dark Ages is the chimney aspect of the plot point. It's not delayed. It's on track. Anyways, Tim, I'll let you answer.
Oh, yeah. Once I sealed off the Holler with a necrotoline suturing ray, I was like, I'm pretty happy letting some anachronism slip in on either side. It didn't seem like really high stakes for that. But for me, like, my engagement with this subject matter started from a very personal level, started from my grandmother and grandfather saying Hisn, Hern, Yorn, Poke, Stob, and all these things that I would hear every day, but not hear on television. And that wasn't the English we were being taught in school, although we're often speaking a different kind of English, right? So it started from that initial realization. We don't talk like the people on TV. I didn't know what to call our accent or dialect until I went away to college. I didn't know we were speaking an Appalachian accent or dialect. I'd never heard it termed as such. And so for me, it was sort of like starting with these things that were just part of my everyday existence, and then realizing that there was a history and a cultural context and all these other, and they connected to all these other things, and slowly discovering that, and then becoming fascinated by it and just delving into it. So for me, it started very, very sort of small. And I started with a lot of family history too. And I found out things that my mother was not happy about me finding out about when I was like digging back through the family tree. Like I found out that her favorite uncle, my great uncle, named Amarine, and there's a town named Amarine after him in the Holler, allegedly killed a man when a game of matching coins went south at 3 a.m. at a filling station next to Calm Mills in Cliffside. There was something went wrong. He allegedly stabbed a man in the jugular, went to trial, got off. The folks who arrested him were like his cousins. And so there was all this like, well, maybe he probably did it, but like his like parents ran a store down there that people frequented. So he got off, right? So I found out like at the age of like 45 or 46 that my great uncle probably killed somebody when he was 22 or 23, right? And in a very sort of Holler-esque manner, like it's a scenario that you could drop right into the game. And so it was just sort of fascinating. And when you find things like that, it makes you want to look further and know more, but both on a personal level and on a cultural level.
Tim, remind me never to play matching coins with you.
Right, yeah. We'll never match coins, yeah. I might just lose it unaccountably as a genetic condition.
It's genes. It's in the genes.
Yeah.
Right. That is the problem with the write what you know advice. And then the first thing you mentioned about all of our search histories being very suspect is I was joking with David Boop. It's like, man, I hope none of us actually ever have to kill anybody because, if you're a murder author and he writes about a murder mystery detective, yeah, man, all the things like, okay, what poisons do they use? What gun calibers are authentic to this era? Like, how long of a knife is really needed? And yeah, it would not trying to explain this to a group of our peers that, oh no, we play games where we are highly violent and kill things. Oh no, this is take the plea deal. Just take the plea deal. So Scott, getting back around to you, similar part of the question. And let's also throw in this kind of a really good question from Christian Serrano, who he asked, when working with licensed IP, how much co-authoring with the original creators is there, if any? You mentioned you collaborate with Six Gun, and then how is that different from something like Flash Gordon?
Well, yeah, pretty much everybody. Well, no, I think everybody who was associated with Flash Gordon is long in the ground. So I was more or less on my own, but there certainly have been a lot of stuff has been written about that universe. So that was just a matter of just researching as much as I possibly could and filling my shelves with books and comic strips and reference books and all this kind of stuff. And watching a lot of documentaries. Thank goodness for YouTube and things like that, because you can find interviews with people who are long gone, and it's extremely helpful. But yeah, Six Gun was a totally different experience and a wonderful one, because the creators of the comic and I worked very, very closely together. Most of the time when I was writing stuff, I was able to just run it by Cullen Bunn, who wrote all of the Six Gun, and it got to a point where him and the head of the publisher, the comic publisher, they sent me this really, really wonderful email one time. We were about, I don't know, a month or so into writing, and they said, "Scott, we are so happy we have you because you get this universe, and we haven't run into anybody else who really gets it." And so that was a really rewarding creative experience, collaborative experience rather. Right now, the super secret project I'm working on, I've been collaborating with game designers because it's based on an IP, but a gaming IP. And that's been kind of a fun experience as well, because I can say, well, just reach out and say what would happen game wise if such and such occurs in the game, and get a really, really good response. So I love collaborating. I've worked on a lot of IP stuff, Doctor Who, and as I said, Dark Shadows and things like that. Working in licensed universes can be extremely rewarding as well as limiting. But by the same token, if you have access to the people who are responsible for those IPs, it can be great, because you really can know that when you are putting something down on paper, if you get their approval, it is good. It is definitely good to go.
That is fantastic. So we're almost at the hour. So for the last round of questions, I'm going to turn it over to you guys and ask you guys, what's a question that I haven't asked you, and what's a question you want to ask of the other authors? So let's see, John, let's start with you.
Give me the hard one.
Right?
You've been softballing into Scott all day.
That's my prize for getting at least one of the 9 characters I played survive your night train. Only because Michelle Hensley was smart enough to be like, "We're next to the livery. Let's just get the horses and get out of town." And I'm like, "No, let's be heroes." And oh no, that didn't work the last 5 times. So
the made it all the way right. In his nightshirt.
Oh, I love Night Train, sir. It is worth the mythical status it holds in the Deadlands and Savage Worlds community. But so yeah, sir, for you, what is a question I haven't asked, and or that you want to ask one of the other authors, or both?
I'm going to take the easy one. What's your favorite project that you've worked on, and why?
Okay, so you get to answer that one first, then. Well, I'll give Tim and Scott the time to think. But what is your favorite one then?
Boy, that's for me. That's tough. It would be between probably River of Blood for Deadlands or Deadlands Noir. River of Blood I had a lot of creative space there, and like Scott said, back then, even though I was creating a lot of the Deadlands universe, in my mind, it was kind of like working for a licensed IP, because it was Shane Sandbox. He had a big creative vision, and I wanted to make sure that I stayed within it as best as possible. But River of Blood let me play with the whole Mississippi region, and New Orleans fascinates me. It's just such a different place from the rest of the country, and Bayou Vermilion, hands down, my favorite of all the rail barons. So I got to mess with all of that and kind of build on it. And then Deadlands Noir, because it's close to my heart in a number of ways. One, I've always been more about investigative adventures, and that let me really play that up. 2, I am an investigator. 3, it again focuses on New Orleans. And 4, it lets me write in that hard-boiled style that honestly, I would rather read that than just about anything if it's well done. So it just combined pretty much several things that I really like into one. So
John's question to you: what is your on? And I mean, obviously in gaming we know what it is, but the and otherwise, and maybe your favorite poem. So yeah, what's number one on your list?
Well, besides Holler, I guess, I wrote a what passes for an epic poem, I guess, in the 21st century called Linthead Stomp, about a 6-mile stretch of road where there were 6 or 7 textile mills, just one right after the other, and the communities sort of totally thrived on that until they left, right? So that's probably my most important thing I've written outside the gaming world, of
so
course.
he's written real stuff. So
but yeah, this kind of writing is so much fun, and it's every bit as challenging. And I think the artistic stakes are every bit as high. And I don't feel like there's any difference in how hard my brain has to work to do one or the other, right? It's just a different set of challenges and conventions and aspirations.
Excellent. We'll give you a moment to think about your question. We have Scott answer. Scott, what's been the favorite project?
Flash Gordon, definitely for gaming. I mean, I was a lifelong fan, so as a kid, I watched Flash and grew up with the movie and the comics and everything else. So yeah, definitely Flash Gordon.
That was easy and punchy.
Oh yeah, I wanted to get it quick.
Yes. And guys, Moons of Mongo, it's a thing. You can order it now. It's good. Actually, really good. So Tim,
he knocks that out of the park.
I know
everything in that IP that he works on, he's just killing it.
I was so sad to hear that so there was a really cool little model rocket that came in the box set for the first one, and then the guy who mocked that up has passed away, so we can't do another round of those. So all of you folks who were smart enough to pick up the rocket when it was available, not anymore, never will again. But so cool and so worth it. I mean, I just love that we did that for that project because Flash Gordon's fantastic, and there's news on Flash Gordon like outside of Pinnacle. Isn't there like a new property? Are they going to do a movie or a?
Yeah,
I saw something.
Taika Waititi is supposedly developing it as a new live action project. So
that sounds. I mean,
and just so you know, just to connect it to our gaming conversation, he should have a box set in his hands as we speak. So
nice. That'd be good job on that, Scott. Good job, sir. So Tim, giving you a moment to think, what's your question I haven't asked you, and we can shoot to you and the rest of the group.
What's your favorite non-player character / villain / monster that you've created?
So we'll give John this. We'll give John the time to think, and we'll go right to Scott. What is your favorite? No. We should make Tim answer it first. Tim, you get to answer that first. What is your favorite, and then we'll go to Scott, and then we'll go to John.
Well, I mean, I have a few. I really like Little Sally Toadstool, who's a haint in the holler, and she's like this 10-year-old girl and the ghost of, and she starts combing her long blonde hair with this little brush, and then all kinds of vermin just start spewing out of her corpus. Yeah, rats, frogs, crickets, slugs, and then she seems to disappear, and there's nothing left but the brush. We have some great art for her.
So I can't pull it up right now. I don't have time to go find it. But Jess, who is helping develop the project, she actually took the art for Little Sally's Toadstool and made a bath mat out of it because what inspires getting.
Oh, that was my wife, Jess, who did that.
Oh, that was your wife.
Yeah, that was spousal Jess, as I call her around PEG.
That's fantastic. Yeah. That's why I couldn't find it in the other Jesses. I was like, I know someone threw it to me in chat. That Jess. Fantastic. So there is a Little Sally Toadstool bath mat.
There's one in the world.
One of one.
In my bathroom, yes.
We will throw that up on social media so you guys get a kick out of it, but it is actually really funny. Maybe we should put it on our not the Etsy. We've got a printing thing. I wonder if they do bath mats so we can put the logo on and have.
Oh, and Redbubble, yeah.
Redbubble, that's the one. So scary Scott Woodard. What is your favorite?
It's difficult, but one of the things I would like to say, it's not a specific character, but what's been so fun in the Flash Gordon universe is being able to create a couple new appropriate races or species that show up in the game. So I had our characters that were the mole men, which I thought were perfectly appropriate to the sort of 1930s, 40s Hollywood aesthetic. And then we have some new creatures in Moons of Mongo, which were a blast because those were sort of distilled from 1950s ideas from Flash Gordon. So I think I would actually default to just these two creations or three actually that I've been able to come up with for the Flash Gordon universe, but they've been completely compatible with that universe.
Oh, good answer. Try to follow that up, John Goff.
See, my favorite villain, I didn't really create. I just got to expand on him an awful lot, and that would be Simon LaCroix. But he was already in universe when I got to start writing about him. So I was going to do the Scott thing too. It would have to be, for me, two more things that are tied to Bayou Vermilion, and that would be the Nosferatu and the Skinwalkers. And of them, honestly, I probably feel stronger about the Skinwalkers than I do the Nosferatu, just because when I first introduced them to Shane, I did it in an adventure that we played for Halloween, I think. And they just caught everybody so off guard. And a lot of that goes to players, because what would happen was when somebody got alone with the Skinwalker, I would pull them aside, talk to them. It would kill them, and now they're also the Skinwalker. And we had this whole rotating thing where no one ever knew unless you were a Skinwalker, but the Skinwalker characters could never be in the room with another Skinwalker character at the same time. And they would lure people away, kill one, come back. And then it got down to there was just one person in the group who wasn't a Skinwalker, and she never sees anybody but one other person at a time, but she knows they're not it. And I think it was the first time she'd ever played a role-playing game, and she almost threw stuff at us at the end when it was revealed to her. It was hilarious. Just one of the best gaming sessions I've run, because the players just all ran with it, jumped right in. So
yeah, committed players that's fantastic. So bring us home, Scott. What question did I not ask? You can answer it first, and then we'll shoot it off to our other two authors.
Oh, good grief. Can I pass on this one and let the other guys go first? I have to think about it.
Okay.
We'll pass.
You ask the question, bud. We've already asked the question.
Yeah.
You've already last.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no. If you really want to pass, if you don't want to be
Drop out Scott Woodard.
I
totally understand. I immediately wanted to pass as soon as you said that, Chris.
Right.
That's my first idea was, my dog's barking.
Sorry.
I'm gonna just sneak out of frame. Yeah.
So here's one final question for all three of you. What's either something you want to do next, the crazy idea, or the white whale that you've always wanted to write about but haven't yet? Either way. Are you ready for that one, Scott? You want to think?
I would like to do some more sci-fi, science fiction, but not pulpy. I'd like to do something a little bit more last parsec-y down the line. So that's definitely something I would shoot for.
Fantastic. So Tim, I know it's early. Congratulations on Holler. It's doing fantastic. Folks, if you're watching this and don't know about Holler, it's on Kickstarter right now. It is fully funded. We are a few backers away from unlocking the amazing leatherette limited edition cover with sheep squatch skin. Please unlock that. Just to rid the world of the plague of sheep squatches alone, you need to unlock this level. So go back now. But Tim, what's either the next project or something that you wanted to do and haven't done yet?
I'm not sure. I have a list of 12 that's remained relatively constant. It ranges from medieval traveling acting troupe to atomic age sci-fi in the Midwest to ultra high fantasy where the dragons created the universe, and instead of creating people, they created fae, and they sort of use them as like to test out their philosophies. And it's just a world that's full of, I get lots of notions. We'll see what happens.
Those all sound good. And John, we know the next project from Peg we're going to see from you is Deadlands Dark Ages. Is there a white whale for you, or is there an idea that's just?
I'm looking forward to the GM screen adventure for Dark Ages. I'm piddling at it right now because what I've started doing with the GM screen adventures is focusing on basically an area in the setting and kind of zooming in and expanding on it and having like adventures, more than just one adventure there, but give you kind of a setting plus some smaller adventures, digging into the level that you can't in one of their setting books. But the project that's always been out there for me, but that I've never gotten around to, and I just don't know that there's really that big of a market for it at this point, is a modern horror with an investigative bent. It just doesn't. I mean, it's been done. It's been done so many times. I don't think it's been done right, mind you, but
everybody likes X-Files.
They do, but there's so many options for it that you know, how do you stand out from it? And that's kind of tough. So that's why that remains my white whale, is I cannot come up with a way to keep it grounded in the modern real world, but make it different enough from everything else that's out there. So
that's true. Cell phones, it is interesting to see how horror especially is dealt with cell phones coming onto the scene, because so many of the anxieties people had in pre-cell phone era were not being able to tell anybody that you're in danger, right? Like
I've already got that taken care of.
Okay, right? That is the first question.
That in a modern environment, you have to be able to address instant connectivity on multiple levels, not just cell phones. It's like, is my computer still connected to the internet? Well, I'll send out a blanket email or a chat or whatever. So you have to, all of that, you have to have a way to address. And so that was one of the first things that went through my head. What fixes this problem? So.
Well, awesome. You guys have been fantastic. It is clear why Shane has collected all of you to do wonderful things for Pinnacle. And so guys, if you haven't yet, you can still do the awesome thing and get in on Flash Gordon. You can still get in on the Holler Kickstarter, which is less than a week left, and just about to unlock the biggest stretch goal that is really important: Sheep Squatch cover, limited edition leather cover. And then we are doing no more crowdfunding until next year. I know it's only a month and some away, but we will give you Christmas off. And Deadlands Dark Ages is hot and rising on the one of the future projects. So you will see all these faces again, hopefully soon. But thanks for joining us, guys. It's been a pleasure. And then we're going to do some more panels today. I think Kids at the Table might be the next one. So we'll see you guys in a little less than an hour. So cheers, folks.
Bye-bye.